Okay, I think, am I chairing this?
Yes.
Well, nobody else is.
Aye, well, are there any apologies for absence?
Yes, I've got apologies from Councillor Grant.
Okay, and any declarations of interest?
No.
No, okay. Item 3 is the civic hospitality costs and use of council accommodation. There's a report, pages 3 to 8. Do you want to speak to it, Linda?
So this report advises the committee of the various costs of recurring civic events and also the current estimated level of funding available within the budget for new ones. It also refers to the extent to which under-delegated powers authority has been granted to outside bodies to use council accommodation for meetings and functions which fall out with the letting arrangements managed by other departments, but there are none of those to the best of our knowledge. In addition, and more specifically, it seeks your views on increasing the threshold for approval of hospitality costs under delegated powers, possibly to 750, but I'll take your views on that. The current threshold is £400 and it has been that for some time. This would avoid the need for the approval of the committee to be sought for some smaller events and enable them to be organised more quickly on occasion when required. It also asks for your views on which anniversaries and organisations the committee should consider providing civic hospitality committee for in future, and whether that should be limited, for example, to centenaries. And that arose from discussions at the on the budget early in the year. Also comments that it's an option always to use an organisation's own premises where possible, or it's an option to do so. We're simply just asking you to note that. So I'm happy to take any questions, and if you could give me your views on the threshold and which anniversaries you might want to recognise in future.
Well, I think it's too low. I mean, £400 for a province having to go to a meeting like this is absolutely terrible. So I think even £700 is still low. So I think £1,000 threshold, right, and that's it. As far as we can't even get rid of even premises, right? You know, for the province to have, to get access to premises and having to pay for them is stupid, right?
I mean, I think certainly if you set a ceiling in the province budget, which clearly we have done, and it's been cut quite a wee bit, then, I think you can reasonably raise the amount from £400 because all you're doing is effectively, stopping the need for meetings like this, for maybe going to cost 500 or 600. You're not costing any more to the council because you can't effectively go over the amount of money which the council is allocated to the province for the budget. So, I mean, we aren't spending huge amounts, as is obvious from the list in front of you, but I think, it makes sense to have it a wee bit more generous than £400 just to simply stop meetings like this. And clearly, if there was something was causing you to go way over the budget, you would need to call a meeting and have that discussion anyway, but that kind of seems unlikely.
Yeah, I think the next item maybe gives an example of something that's maybe a smaller type of event, but the costs have just been a bit higher when the details of what is proposed have been looked at. So I think a view was that 750 might be a reasonable amount and still allow you to consider the proposals for maybe larger events, which would obviously cost more, but also recognises that things are just a little dearer than they were a number of years ago. So what about yourself, Councillor Miller? Or have you got a view?
I quite agree with the previous two speakers because one's a provost now and one's a former provost, so they'll have a better idea than me. But as both speakers have said, I think £400 was maybe ideal 10 or 15 years ago, but obviously the cost, and as you say, with the one we're going to be discussing later on, you need to put up barriers and things like that, and that's got a cost as well. So whether you put it up to 750 or £1,000, I'm not really that, because as Liz said, that if you go over it, you're not going to go over the budget anyway because the council sets the budget anyway. So it's, if you put it at, say, as Betty says, at £1,000, well, as Jim, I quite agree with Jim, because he says it's going to be says meetings like this, and obviously we've got the virtual meetings, but this might be the last Civic Hospitality virtual meeting. It might be the council the next time. So, aye, if you go to say £1,000, I don't know whether Jim's agreeable with that or not.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, I'd be happy with 750, 1,000. I mean, we're not spending huge amounts of money. It's simply those occasions where you're going to go over 400, you need to call a meeting. It seems a bit daft.
Yeah.
But I don't see there's any financial exposure to the council, because you're still setting the budget for the provost. So effectively, she can't go over that budget on an annual basis anyway.
So if we reach a consensus on what would be the appropriate level, then would that be useful?
1,000.
1,000, I'm happy with that. I think
there would still be consultation anyway. The delegation is not simply to officers, it's to officers in liaison with the provost and the deputy provost. What about the marking of anniversaries? I think it's been commented that there's a range of anniversaries that have been marked in the past. Some of them have been for 25 years or 50 or 125. But we didn't know whether you wanted to reach a view on a policy effectively and which ones you would mark, whether that's centenaries or centenaries and 50th anniversaries or whatever.
Aye, well, add 100 anniversaries and probably 50 anniversaries for good clubs, if it's, been well used, if you like, right, the years and well run, then I don't have a problem with that. But I mean, for 25 years, for 10 years, for things like that, that's rubbish, right? I mean, the one that's come, this for the Clarkson disaster, I mean, you've got 22 folk for that area lost their life, you know what I mean? It'd be wrong for, try and put in a good spread for them.
I think we were maybe thinking more in consideration of the anniversary of the establishment of an organisation rather than maybe something of the Clarkson disaster.
Aye.
I mean, I think when you're looking at anniversaries, there's obviously some of the local clubs and organisations that never crosses their mind to celebrate an anniversary and ask for civic hospitality. There's others that, shall we say, ask more frequently. I think we should probably set some guidelines. I mean, the one that jumps to mind, we've just done Merns Bowling for 100 years. Now, that seems to be perfectly reasonable to celebrate 100 years of the bowling club. But Giffnock were in looking for 125, for hospitality for 120, So, they ask, and it's a big, well-run club and all the rest of it, you know what I mean? But it's maybe a wee bit cheeky to say it should be for 125 for various organisations. I know we did agree to that, and I'm not averse to that when they're well-run clubs, but there are other organisations. I can think of the local Catholic Church in Thornliebank that asked for an anniversary well before 100 years, but that was because the church was, recently formed, as it were, but it's a busy, well-used church. So for something like 50 years, it's absolutely appropriate, I think, that we celebrate these sort of anniversaries,
So from what I'm hearing is maybe 50th and 100th anniversaries, is that?
Aye.
It's reasonable. And I suppose you maybe need to look at 150th as well, if you're getting up in steps of 50.
Okay.
That's right.
Some organisations are getting towards the 50. I mean, the only point I would make with Giffnock is we did agree to 125, so you might, they haven't come for that, but I think in all fairness to them, we probably need to honour that one.
No, that event is still to be revisited, and we will enter into discussions with the club in due course. And as you say, Provost, that event has already been approved. So it's just with the opening up of premises, we're just on the start of that journey. So we will be in contact with the club to pursue that, and we'll let you know the outcome.
Okay. The other wee thing is that just anniversaries. I mean, to quote an example, one we did last week, where the old sailor came up from Newcastle, and he was 97. And it was actually a fabulous event at the Neilson War Memorial. I mean, there was a request from the Neilston War Memorial people through Paul O'Kane for a wee bit of hospitality for them. I mean, it was absolutely right and proper that we did it. And
no, it's not been suggested that any of these kinds of requests wouldn't be considered. This is just simply saying, if we were to look at organisations and setting aside everything else, which of those anniversaries of those organisations could be recognised, and I'm happy to record that would be 50th, 100th in increments of 50 years thereafter. But it was never intended to suggest that you looked at the other things. They would still be taken forward and discussed with you in the appropriate manner.
Okay, I think it's great, and it's just useful to set that out, because I mean, you do get the obvious ones are the Nielsen War Memorial, because they've had, as I say, the old sailor coming up from Newcastle, and the people across from Norway, but they've actually been very, very successful events, and the people who've attended them have been genuinely very, very grateful that the council put it on, and incredibly grateful, that they've put it on. So I think it shows East Renfrewshire in a really good light. As I say, the family that came up from Newcastle were really made up, and the people that came across from Norway were really made up, as were the local War Memorial Association. So it's win-win-win all the way for these small events. I just would like, as long as we have the ability to continue to do that, I think any provost, the ones that come after me, I think would welcome that ability to welcome people into the area.
Yes, the proposal wasn't meant to impact on that in any way. That's fine. Okay, agreed. Item 4 is the 50th anniversary of the Clarkson disaster, and you've been asked to consider the provision of civic hospitality to mark the 50th anniversary of the disaster in 1971. So there's details of the proposal in the appendix. The estimated costs are £730 for the hire of Clarkson Hall, a piper, tea, coffee, flowers and barriers to ensure the safety of those attending, and there's £5,385 left in the budget, or the estimated budget for that event. So I'm just seeking your approval to proceed with that.
Yes, definitely.
Absolutely. I mean, I think this is an important event. As you know, I'm unable to attend because I'm on holiday, so I'm afraid it's fallen to you, Betty. So sorry about that.
I done it the last time, Jim. It was smashing. I enjoyed it.
Well,
there was no tea writing off.
We're grateful that
I had one for the 40th anniversary, and obviously the Clarkson disaster is quite close to my heart, because I lost a lot of friends and milk customers. And one of the guys I curl with, he came home for the school, and his mum never came home at all.
That's right.
It's just, I didn't realise that to the 40th, and the two of us just stood together, and actually the two of us stood and had a wee greet to ourselves, because my father just went through the Clarkson just 30 seconds before it happened. So I mean, I could have been without a father very easily. So I mean, some of this is very close to my heart. But how would you, again, are you going to do it? I mean, we did it for the 30th, we did it for the 40th, we're doing it for the 50th. What about the 60th, 70th? Do we keep on going?
Well, something happened within, something was happened bad that happened within that area, East Renfrewshire. And I think it should be recognised every 10 years. I really do.
I agree with you, Betty. I mean, I think there's an expectation that the council markets, and we have done in the past. But you're right, 50 years is a big one. I mean, the STV have been on a couple of times because they want to film it, and clearly they want, there'll be national interest in this. It's not something that's confined to East Renfrewshire. There's almost likely to be TV programmes that will commemorate the event in some way. Just reminding people that 50 years ago this was a major disaster. So it would look very odd as a council if we weren't putting something that was, a reasonable memorial on. So I'm just sorry I can't be there to do it, but I think it's absolutely appropriate that the council does it, and we need to do it to put on something proper.
I think if the TV cameras are there, we can't have Betty there. She'll be crabbing.
Listen,
but I'll try and be pleasant.
She's a lot better looking than me, so I'll.
That's true.
After what's to come, Jim, for Jesus' sake, right? If he thinks I'm crabbing, wait to see what's coming behind us, right? And that's it. Right, I'll just keep on lipstick that day.
That's it.
Do you think that'll be an improvement?
Well, I don't know, my teeth are falling out, so don't ask me to smile.
You're a hard man. Aye. Okay, but I certainly think we should put on something reasonably good. And I know the churches have been in contact with me. They're keen to be involved, so I have passed that on to PR. So if we can make sure that we do involve the local people, particularly the local action churches, as much as we can, just to ensure that we get proper buy-in from the local community. Sure, we will.
The community council, I think they're the ones that's organising it, but the Clarkson churches together are also weighing in with their. I mean, there's between the Catholic Church, the Church of Scotland, the Episcopal Church, the whole lot.
Well, the number of attendees is in recognition of currently the position we're in terms of COVID, but there will be a few representatives of churches. Is it Churches Together in Clarkson? Event. And they are opening a number of churches in the local area to allow for reflection on the day of the tragedy as well. So there is some involvement with them.
You've got the fire chief that was there at the time. He comes. I hope to God you see it there this year again. You've got, all the different emergency service that attended on it.
Yeah.
They've always sent representation to it.
Well, they're amongst the list of people that we're contacting for to attend, and those invitations will be going out hopefully this week to confirm that arrangements to everybody.
Linda, what about relatives of the folk that lost?
Yes, there are relatives of those that were involved in the disaster. We were most directly affected by it. They're amongst the guest list that's proposed.
God love them, it's a sin. Right, it's like a Gifford Pit disaster,
For my time, that. Never heard of that one, Gifford Pit disaster.
I know.
You have
Aye.
See that church at the top of Darnley Road, it was burnt down in 1940. That's got a lot of the bodies in it. Because I've got relatives up there that were killed in it, right? Well, not in my time, but my granny's relatives, they were all killed in it. Right, they were all miners.
Because that was down in the Braid Bar?
No, in Barhead. See where the Columbia Club is? Well, it's no longer the Columbia Club, thank God. Well, behind that, there was a big church that burnt down in 1940. And there's graves all there, all down the side, for the Gifford Pit disaster.
Aye, but did the pit disaster, did that know what happened in the Braid Bar? I think it happened in the Braid Bar because a guy that used to work with us, he was the last farmer in Braid Bar Farm before it was all built up. And he says, all these mine workings, they were still there. There were no fences around them or anything. Sometimes the coos were going missing. Doing one of the pit.
Doing the thing. Aye, that's it. But anyway, that's just another thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. That concludes the...
That's brilliant. Thanks very much. Right. Okay. Talk to you all later. Bye.
See you later.